Research, Education, Conferences, and
Communications
Committee, the REC. And it's a big job because we do a lot of things, and he's really taking the reins and leading us forward in that. So he has an interest in history and submitted this proposal. We loved it, so here he is.
Great. Thank you very much, Dr. Penniston, and thank you to the organising committee for giving me the opportunity to all talk to you today. My talk has a slightly different flavour from the other talks. It's a historical one, and I'm going to talk a bit about the pain of power and how kidney stones and world leaders have actually changed world history. These are my disclosures, the most pertinent one being my passion for stones and for medical history. So we all know that stones have basically plagued mankind since early antiquity. If we look back at preserved mummies, we have actually found that dating back 7,000 years, they have actually found stones. And actually, sort of texts that were scribed on these sort of Mesopotamian sort of stone slabs, even as far back as 3200 BC, actually depicted the concepts of kidney stones that were sort of suffering their people back then. It was up until 600 BC when a sort of ancient Indian sort of philosopher, Sushruta Samhita, who also had an interest in surgery, described surgical options for stone treatments at that time. And what was interesting is if you sort of fast forward maybe 200 to 300 years after that, Hippocrates very much came out with a very famous quote that I will not cut even for stone. And this is something that we sort of adhere to in many ways in the way that we've become in the way we treat stones. If we look at the algorithm of how stones have been looked at, how they've been investigated, how they've been treated over time, we have naturally gone very minimally invasive, from very big open surgeries to more minimally invasive sort of approaches. And even the research has moved away from being able to diagnose it and the clinical symptoms. And as we've heard today, some very excellent lectures on looking at the pathophysiology of stones, how can we prevent stones, and really try to make stones history. With the increasing age of our leaders, the scrutiny of their health has become ever magnified. And this was particularly epitomized in our last presidential election campaign, and I won't go into the politics. But certainly, the power and prestige of our leaders does not make them immune from disease conditions. They can still suffer from diseases, and kidney stones is naturally one that they can still have, because we know kidney stone disease transcends racial, social, economic boundaries. The question we've really got to do is, when our patients suffer from stones, we know that it influences their lives, it influences their families, it influences their ability to work. These leaders, when they get kidney stones, it naturally will impact their ability to work and make decisions. And this led me to want to think about, did kidney stones in history really change world history? This timeline that I've created here kind of highlights a number of leaders in history, some of them royal, some of them political, and some of the major effects that it had on their sort of political reigns and some of their tenure. I'm going to explore some of the changes in a more geographical way. Let us start in Russia. Let's see what happened there. So there was a gentleman here called Peter the Great. He was the Tsar of Russia and later became the very first emperor of Russia itself. He was known for being a modernized, forward-thinking leader. He enabled the modernization of Russia. He expanded its territory, and he founded St. Petersburg. He had a number of titles. He was a military leader, he was a reformer, but one of them that he probably didn't want to have was being a kidney stone reformer. And if we look at some of the impact that his kidney stones may have had, some of this is from what I've read, some of it is maybe me theorizing of what could be a problem here, but certainly he was known to have a slightly irritable and impatient temperament, and certainly this may have been linked to some of his stone issues. His ability to govern has been documented that he took periods out from being a leader. He had to devolve his power to his advisors. He was not able to engage in some of the military campaigns that he wanted. And I'm surmising that maybe some of these episodes of his stones, because obviously the treatment options were very limited in those days, may have been part of the factors that affected his ability to govern in those eras. He also had physical limitations. He was not able to do his military drills. He was a big ship. He was interested in shipbuilding, and some of this was also affected by his stone episodes. And he interestingly died of urosepsis from a kidney stone. Joseph Stalin, this was a leader of the Soviet Union from the 1920s until his death in the 1950s. And he did transform the USSR into a global superpower, but he is very well known for his sort of iron fist mentality of how he ruled things. And he had a very sort of strong political regime that led to the deaths of millions. And he was a secret stone former. And the question I have, did the stones inflame his rage? You know, was the colic what caused the conquering of some of these people? Let's move now to France. So Napoleon I, I should say, of France, he was involved in many of the French revolutionary elements. He was involved in the Napoleonic Wars. And in the Battle of Borodino, interestingly, he had some unorthodox tactics. And it's actually documented that he was suffering from kidney stones during that battle. During that battle, he was doing very successfully, but then he made a few blunders where he could have really capitulated a lot of things. He could have really taken control and actually taken the Imperial Guard, but something held him back. And I'm kind of thinking this was the stone that was holding him back. And a lot of people in history have subsequently criticized him for not doing those leadership approaches and potentially not moving further forward as he could have done. He then fought in the Battle of Waterloo in 1815. And what was interesting was that he had another kidney stone episode. We all know that when we are in stressful environments, or our patients are in stressful environments, they're obviously not looking after their health as well, and probably he was not drinking as much, and this exacerbated a kidney stone episode. And his situation ultimately resulted in the loss of that battle, and he therefore ended his reign. So I like to refer to this as the expulsive therapy for stones. And he was also criticized throughout his period for his very authoritarian approach. He did not like the media. He did not like free press. He actually cancelled a lot of independent newspapers. And a lot of this may have been the fact that they were disclosing the reasons for some of his weaknesses because of his kidney stones. Napoleon III. This, interestingly, was the nephew of Napoleon I. So this kind of pertains to the family history, the genetic potential links of him developing kidney stones. Again, I don't know what type of kidney stones they formed. But he was the president of France, and he later on became the emperor of France as well. His health during the Franco-Prussian War, which is sort of common-day Germany now, did deteriorate, and this was believed to be due to a kidney stone. The loss of that war, and potentially the Second French Empire and its expansion, was this really due to a mere kidney stone that ended the empire? We're now going to move across the pond to the United Kingdom. So the de facto first Prime Minister of Great Britain was Lord Robert Walpole, and he was well known for having had kidney stones. He had a very progressive, very non-turbulent political career, and was very progressive in some of the development of Great Britain at that time. So maybe his stones were not a problem that affected the United Kingdom history. But Winston Churchill, this is someone that needs no sort of introduction, was a very well-known statesman, soldier, and prime minister during World War II. He was known for his leadership. He had very powerful, iconic images. He was a real iconic figure. He was also a great writer. He was a Nobel Prize winner in literature. But his true health was shrouded in a lot of mystery. And he may have been suffering, and what we believe to be secretly suffering, with a war with the kidney stone. It's possible that this was influencing him during his fight during World War II, or his leadership during World War II, and was the success of the Allies due to him getting over a kidney episode, that he was revitalized, that he could get back in there and give the good decisions that he needed to. And he really did inspire, despite potentially having a lot of these health issues. So we're now moving back here to the US, and there was a really nice paper by Dr. Husman and Dr. Preminger actually last year, exploring the role of Lyndon B. Johnson, who was our 36th president here in the United States. And that paper really did highlight some of the interesting elements of how he suffered with his kidney stones and his very private battle with kidney stones. During his 1948 senatorial campaign, he actually was suffering from a really bad kidney stone episode. And one of his advisors is even quoted as saying, "I don't know how he was functioning with the amount of narcotics that he was on." This is, you know, someone running for a senator. He was hospitalized with an episode of sepsis when he was actually campaigning in Dallas during one of his political campaigns. And at that time, he had a failed stent placement. They couldn't get a stent up on him when he was septic. At that time, putting in a nephrostomy was not something that was commonplace. And he, interestingly, was flown out to the Mayo Clinic because they were developing a lot of endoscopic approaches back in those days. And he was operated on by Dr. Gershwin Thompson at the Mayo Clinic to treat his stone at that time. He was very concerned about how all these stone episodes and his maladies would influence his political career and his image in public. And as a result, did not divulge a lot of these issues to the public. And I think this was really a missed opportunity in advocating for kidney stone disease. He was also sort of the president during the Vietnam War, and there was a lot of variation in his sort of escalation strategies in Vietnam. And again, some of this me surmising was some of the variation in his escalations related to his stones, with a bad stone episode making him want to fight more. He interestingly did not run for a second term as president, and that may have been because of his current stone episodes. And some of me thinks, you know, because people may have secretly known about these battles that he was fighting, that he was not divulging, did they lose trust in him, that he was not being transparent about his illnesses? So when I sort of look at all of these things with regards to how stones have affected our world leaders, it really is shown that the litany of lithiasis has crippled many of our leaders over time. And our leaders are not immune from developing health issues, including kidney stones. And I do think there's a lot of lessons that we can learn from history that can influence potentially how our future leaders, as they develop kidney stones, should think about things. Health disclosure and transparency is a very important thing. With the sort of evolution of social media and ready access to information and potential disinformation, it's very important to be honest and disclose these issues so people know that they're being transparent. At the end of the day, they're human. I think it also highlights what we've seen, that there may have been a lot of missed opportunities here. I think awareness, we all know that as soon as a public figure has a disease condition, the interest in that disease condition escalates. The potential benefit this can have to the sufferers of that disease, and also potentially for research funding, could be a factor here. And I think they really should be potential champions for sort of advocating for more support, understanding, treatment approaches, and also research support to this disease to prevent other people from getting them. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this little whistle-stop journey through the history of potential stones in our leaders, and I thank you all for listening.